bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance. Now from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Purdy Insurance does a great job of making sure you're fully insured, and they do a great job of saving you money. Customer service means everything to them at Purdy Insurance. Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Purdy Memorial Golf Tournament, Susquehanna Valley Country Club, to benefit the Greater Susquehanna Valley YMCA, is coming up on Wednesday, August 5th. Get your team ready. We will be out there. We're looking forward to it. And speaking of looking forward to it, very much looking forward to talking with Tyler Pratt. Standout at Shikellamy, played at Kutztown. Now works for the Bills. I got enough Penn State people up there you're working around. Tyler, welcome to the show. Great to have you with us.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on.
So how did this come about where you were able to get into the Bills organization?
So it started in college. One of my teammates, his dad had worked in the broadcasting department, and he actually played for the Bills back in the 90s. And he was able to get me an internship in the broadcasting department. So I kind of got my feet wet on the broadcasting side and met enough people there and kind of stuck around.
Kind of stuck around, huh?
Yeah. Going on 10 years later, they haven't got rid of me yet.
I mean, but you know what? But that's an important point, because I was talking about this the other night, and I was broadcasting baseball. I said, one of the keys to me in sports as a player, but I think it also comes when it comes to front office work, or in your case, being a national scout, is that the ability to keep your job going, your job alive, right? Keep your career going. And how important has that been for you in what is a very competitive field?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the main things. I think is just always trying to be ahead of the curve, and trying to see what's coming up, whether it's next year, 3 years from now, 4 years, 5 years, and at the same time you're trying to balance perfecting your craft. So trying to be innovative, and at the same time trying to be where your feet are.
I've had a chance to talk with Brandon Beane, who I have a lot of respect for, and he's a great guy to talk with. As a national scout, Tyler, what are the Bills looking for? What comes into play when they want to have somebody looked at?
I think it starts with, just being a good football player. I think at the foundation, it's that. And then from there, you're looking for good people, good teammates, good workers. As cliche as it sounds, I think good people make good football players, and they make good teammates, which make good teams. So I think that's kind of the foundation of it all.
So how do you get it's one thing for you to look at and say, okay, well, let's take an offensive lineman. Arm extensions there, he's got really good feet, so forth. Okay, so you put together that. But the get-to-know-you piece, how do you get to know at least something about them that lets you know that culturally they can be a fit for the Bills? How many different people do you talk to, and how much do you talk to the individual that you might be interested in?
Yeah, so it all starts in the fall when you visit campus. Your first exposure is with the pro liaison, and the pro liaison's a staff member at whatever college you're at, and he's going to give you the intro on the player, the player's background, and then from there he's kind of going to facilitate who you're able to talk to on the visit, whether it's the head coach, the position coach, the strength coach, the trainer, academics. Really, the more the better. So whoever you can get in touch with on campus is key. And then, throughout the fall, you're doing different visits, different schools. You may circle back on some schools, like, your bigger schools, you're going to try to hit twice if you can. And then, come the winter, like January, February, you're going to have your all-star games and the combine, and that's your first exposure to the actual player. So that's the first time you're allowed to talk to the player face-to-face and, get your first interaction with him.
When you left Shikellamy and you go to Kutztown, what did you want to major in your first couple of years?
As bad as it sounds, football. Obviously it's not a major. The closest thing was sport management. But I was an 18-year-old kid who had only wanted to play football. So, bad advice, but my thing was I'm going to play football and worry about the major second. Luckily it all worked out. I probably wouldn't give anybody that advice now, but that was kind of the path I was on.
That's okay, because when I came to Penn State, I wanted to broadcast, and I wanted to do play-by-play, and it sort of worked out. So, but I'm not so,
yeah. I mean, you can't if you're chasing what you love. I don't think you can go wrong.
Because you were on the broadcasting side of it for a while. What did they have you doing up there? And I guess was it Chris Murphy was the play-by-play guy for a while?
It was so I worked for Chris Brown, John Murphy. So we had the John Murphy show back then. Mike Adamak was my direct boss. Simon Tuckey had worked back there with us. Jay Harris, who Jay still runs the One Bills live show now. So I just did a lot of, quote unquote grunt work, I guess, like, B-roll, transcribing things, just helping them with equipment, really anything they asked. And they were such a good group of guys, like knowing that, I was kind of new to the broadcasting world up there and, eager to learn whatever I could. So, really whatever came across their desk, they were always open to share and give me an opportunity to learn.
And then how did the transition over to Scout happen?
So I had met our director of football operations, Kevin Meegank, just early one morning in the hallway. We kind of ran into each other, and it was probably 6:30 in the spring. So it's not in season, and he kind of was like, "What are you? Who are you, and what are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm an intern and broadcasting. I'm kind of just here, and just watching some film upstairs in the recruiting area, or not recruiting, the intern area by myself." And from there, we had kind of built a relationship. And when the broadcasting internship was up, he was like, "Hey, we do football operations interns for training camp." He's like, "It's a 6-week thing. If you'd be open to it, we would love to have you."
All right, so you're there at a time where you're probably not supposed to be there. So you're putting in the extra time, the extra work with a lot of curiosity. They see that work ethic. Where did that work ethic come from in you? Parents, coaches, Shikellamy? Where'd that work ethic come from?
Oh, I think it's all of it. I mean, I guess it would definitely start with my parents, both of them. I think the joke about my dad around town is that he probably can't sit still, whether it's whatever job he's working. I can't keep up with all the jobs he has. I think it starts there, and then just, Shikellamy. I think, Coach Tim Four is another one. He's, I think he'd say he's a main pillar in probably the person I've become and the things he's instilled in me since I was probably, 10, 11, 12 years old, coming up in the basketball program there. And then I just think I got lucky with, the group of friends I grew up with, the people in the community, the town itself, like, whether it was playing pickup basketball at the playground or the YMCA, and just, some of the older guys around just looking out for the younger guys and showing you the ropes to an extent, some tough love. I think it was kind of a village effect that kind of made me who I am.
Every team will tell you that their fan base is special. All right, so you've been around, right, the Bills, quote, Mafia. The Bills Mafia is what they call it. How can you describe to us what the Bills Mafia is like?
I don't know if I have the right words or the right phrases. What comes to mind is just, I guess, loyal, passionate, love. Like they love their Bills. The closest thing is I grew up in obviously central Pennsylvania, and kind of the way people treat Penn State is very similar to how Bills fans treat the Bills. Like it's, up, down, average season, good season, no matter what, they're always going to show up. They're always going to cheer. Every Saturday or in our world, Sunday is going to be life or death for the next week. So I'd say there's a lot of similarities to the Penn State culture and the Bills Mafia culture.
Have you done a full tour of the new stadium yet? And if so, what do you think of it?
I can't say it was a full tour. It was it was almost like the beginnings of the outer structure of it. So you couldn't really tell what was what yet, but just from the outside, going to the facility when I'm up there and seeing it across the street, it's awesome. It's really, really cool. And I think that opening home game on Thursday night is going to be awesome.
Do you do everything on computer, or do you write notes down? And how extensive are your notes?
Yeah, I've gone digital with a lot of things. A couple years ago, I used to be like pen and pad, and I'd make a whole notebook for the fall. But with technology these days, like I have my iPad, I got my Apple Pencil, and it's so much easier to organize my notes on OneNote through there with different folders for different schools, different documents. Everything's on my iPad, so I could be at Alabama's practice and somebody mentioned something, a player from last year or for next year, and all of a sudden, like 2 clicks and I'm into the roster for next year, and I can make a note on a player to keep. So I go to next year, all of a sudden it's 2027, and boom, here I have 2 notes on a guy for next year.
All right. Obviously, Joe Brady is now the head coach, and Joe was a GA here for 2 years at Penn State, so that's where I got to know him here out in the practice field. And, of course, Trace McSorley is now up there with him, and, of course, everybody here knows Trace. Because Brandon Beane is the constant and Terry Pagula is the constant, is there anything different that maybe Joe Brady's looking for in your scouting, or does it really just come from the front office as to how to do this?
I think it's a blend of both. I think every head coach is going to have their style of how they want to do things, the players they want to bring in, not only just scheme-specific players, but culture-type players. So I think Joe is, I think this spring Joe is focused on his staff and building the staff out and getting comfortable in the head coach position, and then from there just, taking steps to help us and, show us what he's looking for in his offense and what he's looking for in a defense. And, I think the guys he brought in terms of coaching staff are very, very smart. I think they're really good. And, I think we're going to keep growing and building this thing the right way.
To you, what makes the Bills organization special?
Oh, it's the people. The people are awesome, from Mr. Pagula down to, the intern in any department in the building. I think everybody's treated the right way. I think they genuinely care for the people. I think they want the best for the people. And, I think it's a really good, almost family-run organization where, Mr. Pagula's kids are in the building. They're interacting with us. His son, Matt, is always around. He's helping us in the scouting department. So I think that they do a really good job of instilling a culture of, you're going to treat everybody the way that people want to be treated.
So you can tell the difference between the guy that works for them and somebody that knows them, has known them for a while. I call him Terry.
And I'm sure he's one that's what he wants to be called. He's awesome. I think that's the only way to put it. Like he's just one of the guys, and I think I think he enjoys that.
Oh, I remember when they lived up in Bollesburg. I mean, they were here in Bollesburg for a while. In fact, the late Dr. Wayne Sebastianelli, I think people know last month Wayne passed away. He's Penn State's team doctor. He actually operated on Jessie a couple of times. And look at the career she's put together in tennis. I don't think a lot of people realize he had done that. But it's.
Oh no, I didn't even know that either.
No, now. You can kind of pass that a little. No need to pass it along. Playing at Shikellamy, when you were there, you mentioned Coach Tim Ford. What made it such a rewarding experience for you? Because I always feel like a hometown sets a foundation for somebody's life. So how did it set the foundation for you?
I thought I think it all starts with just, like I had mentioned before, my upbringing, the group of friends I had, the people I was around, the coaches, the community itself. Like, I think where the football program was, for one, and where it kind of went when I was there, I think that's just proof of sometimes you just put your head down and work, and things are going to work out. I think there's a lot of similarities between the team we were on back then, even the basketball team, just a gritty, tough, find a way type of team. And I think that kind of mirrors my path in a way of where I've gone. And I think that has a lot to do with it. Like I said, the upbringing, the town we grew up in, Sunbury and Northumberland are different than some of the other towns around there. And I think there's some pride that you take in being from those towns, that aren't like some of the other towns around there.
Two friends of mine are moving up to Buffalo because it turns out that their daughter lives there and they're going to retire, and they say, hey, we're going to bite the bullet. We want to be near there. That's great. So I said, does she live near the airport or does she live south? And they said airport. And I said, that's good because they don't get as much snow at the airport. So which side do you live on?
So right now I actually live in Charlotte. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina now.
Perfect.
I did 4 years up there. And my 4 years I was living right in the village of Orchard Park. So I was 5 minutes from the stadium, and it probably snowed every day from October to the end of March. Even, my first year at the draft, we had snow on draft day.
So did you ever have to be one of those that go over and shovel out the stadium?
No, because luckily I was in the office working, but there were some times that I couldn't go home because of the snow from the office. So you just find a place to stay, whether it's under the desk or, a blow-up mattress in someone's office, and you just kind of bunker down for the night, and that's where you're staying. Figure out your car the next morning or the next evening if you can leave, or if you got to stay another night there.
Obviously, at Penn State practices, I see a number of scouts all the time. I mean, just over and over and over. Almost every week I'm seeing a number of scouts. How many different campuses do you think you go to during the course of a season?
It's a good question. I'd say ballpark, maybe 40 to 45.
Okay. Wow.
Obviously you're going to treat some bigger schools different. You're going to hit your bigger schools twice, like your Alabamas, your Georgias.
Sure.
Schools like that. And then, the smaller ones, like I'll hit, I'm in Charlotte. So UNC Charlotte, I'll hit those guys one time, and, I'm in and out, and it's a pretty efficient day.
Yeah. Have you ever done the Penn State thing?
So I went to Penn State one time. It was probably my second year in Buffalo, so 2018, 2019 maybe.
Okay.
I went one time for a practice and did the whole visit, which obviously as a kid growing up a Penn State fan, it was pretty cool. I was probably more of a fan than an actual Buffalo Bills employee that day.
So we probably crossed paths on the practice field, probably when that happened along the way.
No doubt.
How intriguing, does everybody handle scouts the same way, or are there certain idiosyncrasies with schools that you have to deal with that maybe you don't have to deal with somebody else?
Yeah, every school's different. Some schools give you full access, so they let you come in any day of the week, and you can come when you want. You can talk to who you want as long as it works in their schedule. Some schools only let you come, 2 days a week, and you can only talk to the select people on the schedule that day. So it varies for different schools, and, I understand both sides of it. Some guys are open because, they don't care. They have, 20 years experience doing it, and they're fine with it. Some guys are closed because they have a big game coming up, and, they want their guys focused and not worried about NFL scouts standing out there or staff members talking to scouts while they're trying to practice. So I think it just all really depends on the school and, what type of season they're having, or what type of, whether it's early in the year or late in the year.
In the draft process, Tyler, some programs, and the Baltimore Ravens, I'll give it as an example, Eric DaCosta. In fact, his daughter Jane, full disclosure, took my broadcasting class at Penn State. They want the scouts in the room and access when they're doing drafts. How do the Bills handle that?
I'd like to say we're involved as anyone. Like, I think Dean does a really, really good job of just, a collective and inclusive culture of just, he cares what we think. We've had the most exposure to these guys, and he wants to know what each individual scout thinks about, every player that they saw in their area and they scouted and they spent, extensive time and hours and work on. So, I think we're one of the best that, include the scouts and give us an opportunity to speak our mind and put our name on guys. And, I can't say enough good things about our process and how we do things.
One last one. Is there a guy that you scouted who's made it that you're proud of, that you got the word on first?
That's a good question. It was probably my first year on, actually being on the road, like truly being on the road and going to school visits. A fullback we signed as an undrafted free agent, Reggie Gilliam.
Oh, yeah.
Out of Toledo. I had done the school visit, and I don't know if I was the first, because, multiple scouts go in from each team, so I don't know if I was the first or second guy going in, but, I had gone in, and they were raving about this fullback that he had like 6 or 7 block kicks in his career. He was like a special teams guy, and, at the time we had Pat DeMarco, who, was older. Pat probably had a year or two left, so it was like, like he could be a good replacement for DeMarco. And at the time, in my young mind, I was like, I would draft this guy, and, threw a draftable on him. And, long story short, it didn't end up getting drafted, but we did sign him. And I think he just got a nice 2 or 3 year deal from the Patriots. So he was probably like my first true, let me throw a big grade on him. And, hindsight, I probably shouldn't have gone that high, but, luckily I did, and it worked out for him and myself.
Experience tells you something later, doesn't it?
No doubt. Yeah.
Tyler, absolute pleasure. We're thrilled for you, and hopefully we can stay in touch and have you on again.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for giving me the time.
Tyler Pratt, Shikellamy Zone, Kutztown Zone, and now the Buffalo Bills Zone. This half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance. Now from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Sunbury Motors, Ford, Kia, Hyundai, the best in new inventory. Great pre-owned inventory with the all-important Sunbury Motors guarantee. Terrific service department, quick lane, inspections, routine, difficult. They handle it all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia. Routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf and online at sunburymotors.com. Always a pleasure to bring in the incomparable Neal Coolong. Sir, welcome. Great to have you with us.
As always, the pleasure is mine to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, all the years we've been doing this, I usually just set the tone, throw out a topic. He answers anything, anytime, anywhere brilliantly. What are the favorite topics you like to discuss?
That's a good question. I like the more in-depth stuff that it has multiple layers to it that could be this or that or the other thing, mostly because I think it puts you in more of a mode of explaining rather than weighing in on. It comes up with better follow-up. I could go somewhere that you hadn't thought of or you wanted me to go, so you bring up the next thing would be in line for that. if we say like the scheduling issue, we're talking about the NFL looking to add more games to the schedule. There's a lot of different ways that you could approach that. I kind of like being able to go over, multiple angles of something. So nowadays you're looking at directionally within the NFL. I think there is something to be said about the expansion of it, but if ratings aren't increasing in the NFL the way that we think that we are, is that due to declining interest, or is it more that we're struggling to identify exactly how many people are watching any one given thing because there's 400 different ways to watch it right now? That's kind of a tentacle topic. There are a lot of different things that you can go off of with that. Beyond that, I enjoy the stuff that we talk about, from college to the pros. I think you have insight in the college game that I probably don't have, and it's fun to see how that can mesh, transitionally into the NFL. How does it morph into, tomorrow's topic? These players, these issues, these things going into the NFL. I've always found in my career, I've mentioned this before, but Bill Parcells said something that always stuck with me. The NFL is what the college game gives us. So looking at it from the college perspective, what's the NFL going to be in 5 years? I think 5 years ago, we anticipated the issues that are coming up with NIL. How does that change the game? The college game? So what's going to happen for what we know today? Where is college going to be, and how is that going to disrupt, enhance the NFL? Where is the game going? I think the business of it is all completely up in the air. There are so many different things that could come up. But also what's really fun is, Terrion Arnold getting arrested and then out of nowhere getting cut by the Lions. Wondering just how far the NFL has come since Roger Goodell took over 20 years ago. The disciplinary piece, if you want to call it that, in the NFL, the punishment part of it was not a thing really as much 20 years ago, before Goodell took over and the owners basically said, look, you need to be a cop here for a little bit, and we got to figure out how we're going to, be unified on this. But certainly 20 years ago, we would have heard of Terrion Arnold's situation, but for him to be released that quickly, I don't know. It probably would have gone back and forth on it for a while, but the Lions know to some degree, and this has all transpired in the last 20 years. This has been built up. The Lions now have insight into the facts of the case, what he's up against, what he's looking at. That compels them to just release him now, because it's not worth the headache of giving the non-answers every step of the way that they're going to approach it. It's another thing I think that the league and the league has changed along with society, that it makes me interested. I enjoy multiple angle kinds of things like that.
I'm going to get to the Arnold thing in a moment. But when it comes time, because you and I have a lot of in-depth conversations, this medium, in my opinion, has transitioned to hot takes and not in-depth conversations. Is that difficult at times in a business model to sell in-depth, intelligent conversation, which you bring to the table, or in-depth, intelligent writing that you bring to the table all the time? Can that be difficult today to sell, or is there a real market for it?
What's interesting about that, I hate being on the side that I'm on, because you have to know how to sell both of them. But you're right, it's a hot take environment. Having to tell people that is not the favorite part of my job. Having to say, no, we can't do that because we have to write, 350 words on this. That gets tiring after a while. I feel like there would be a market for it if that's what was offered.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yes.
And unfortunately, the difficult thing is it's a capital investment. But here's my thing. This is what's happened. Now, as you know, I worked with Sports Illustrated
Yes.
a while back. I was on the wrong side of layoffs over there.
Yeah.
There were massive challenges internally with that. Long-form, in-depth storytelling is very expensive. When you don't have the numbers to support that kind of journalism, it's difficult to keep it going. But what I argued at that point, and I was kind of I was in a kind of fulcrum position, if you will. I was in charge of the quick stuff, but frankly, that's the stuff that got people in the door. What I told people was, we play Brown Eyed Girl to get people to come in and hear the originals later on at the bar.
Right.
We're not pretending to be something different. What we are doing is grabbing people to make sure that they can see the whole product. And frankly, that worked. It does work. You have to have the leadership on both sides of the shop to kind of look at this and say, we've got to have both components of this if it's going to work. You know, the metaphor that I use is, I think an audience, think of looking at a brick wall. Some people see the red of the brick. Some people see the gray of the mortar. Mm-hmm. Whichever one you're looking at primarily, both of those things are needed for the wall to stand.
Right.
So you have to have the in-depth stuff, and you have to have the quick stuff, which I don't think is necessarily a question of quality. It's a question of depth and desire, you know.
Yes.
Sports always were a soap opera. It's really what they are. And chicken versus the egg, which came first, but it's drama. When you have that drama, people will pay attention to it. But that drama is I think, to a degree, better to consume quickly. Sometimes you want to know all the details of, you know, stage and curtain. You want to get into it. Sometimes you don't. Offering up both, though, I think is the best way to retain an audience, to keep people coming back. And those people will all be different. They're segmented portions of audience. They love it for this. They love it for this. They love it for this. They may not even know the other content exists. Maybe they do, but this is what they read. People don't tend to read all of it, though, you know? So it's difficult knowing that to hyper-focus on one part of it. I think you kind of have to have all of it, and it's a challenge. You know, when you're a legacy brand like Sports Illustrated, mm-hmm. You need those components. I can speak directly to the fact there are a lot of people that don't really understand exactly how challenging that is and why it is they do what they do. They're ripped on for their level of quality and how it's all falling apart, and that's ironically the hot take of the industry. Not that simple. I can tell you that if they kept going the way they were going from 1992, it would not exist.
Right.
The value has dropped substantially just because an audience has far more options now than it used to. And that's in sports media, that's in just their regular lives, in culture in general. Scaling that now is the real challenge. So for me, I feel like you've got to play Brown Eyed Girl to get people to come in and listen to the originals. You've got to get, if you want substance to sell, you need something you need to be able to pay for it. You've got to finance it. Yeah. And that oftentimes is the quick hitting stuff. But what we see right now, and some people will like this, certainly a lot of people won't, the real overlord of everything, Google, has cut down distribution of media products considerably, and that makes it hard to do anything. That's the real problem now. It's not necessarily a lack of quality or even a lack of desire. The value of it is going to go absolutely through the floor if this is the way things continue over the next couple of years. And that's not an issue of AI. That's not it is, but there are the presence of many issues that come into it. So the long form stuff, I think right now has honestly just as big of a potential market as anything. The question is, how do you get the content in front of people in a way that they're comfortable and they want it. I think, though, the audience needs to understand most of the routes that publishers used to take to get in front of your face are gone, or just simply the faucet's turned off. Used to be that, everybody I worked with at SI told the same stories. When they were a kid, they ran to the mailbox to get the newest edition. They read it while they were eating their cereal before they went to school. I did the same thing. That version is gone. People aren't reading magazines. Extremely expensive to publish. A brand like Sports Illustrated still exists because it's a brand. Anybody else, very difficult. I was a part of 2 publishing teams that put Athlon Sports out while I was there. That was bare bones. There was like 6 of us that put that whole thing together. Really difficult to turn a profit on something like that. From there, you go into the basic internet, direct bookmarking of websites. I did that when I was with SB Nation. Really hard to draw in a loyal audience nowadays because of the next step, which was really the proliferation of social media. Now everyone's going on Facebook, essentially, to find all of their news. Facebook saw how many people were making money off of Facebook and cut it off. They limit it. You're not able to get in with specific audiences, even if they want that content. Facebook isn't just going to offer it up to them. There's a lot of different things they have to go through. They balanced everything out. That pushed people into the Google world, which is one part of where we are right now. Google Discover, which is something you may or may not even know exists, was kind of the last ship to drive big audience with stuff. But within the last 18 months, that's been cut off. Now it's how do we get content in front of a lot of people? Because if you want quality, if you want to do all those things, you need an audience. That, or the alternative really is, let's all get on Substack, Patreon, whatever it is, and have people just pay, ironically, far more money than they used to for Sports Illustrated to get individual articles given out at one at a time from one writer. So we've kind of killed diversity. We've certainly killed expansion. And in that case, it all kind of boils down to the numbers, and the long form stuff just simply takes far longer to produce. And it's much harder on a per article basis to drive revenue the way it used to be in multiple different ways from 20 years ago, 10 years ago to today.
No, look, you do have to have a way to get people in the door, all right? And then maybe they'll discover what you're doing. That's the way it is today. And you have, if you want to look up something, it's not just Google, but like if you want to go to Microsoft now has Copilot and things like that, where people are getting quick answers out of the gate for something. All right, so let's bring up Arnold. History teaches if people are taking note of their own history, history can be your greatest teacher. What did Ray Rice teach Roger Goodell and maybe the NFL about how to handle situations?
That's a great question. I feel, and I think you and I have talked for the better part of the entire Goodell era in the NFL.
That's right.
I have been outwardly critical of Goodell, which is to say NFL owners. I'm not necessarily saying Roger Goodell is a person. The leadership that the NFL has taken on, the direction that they've gone, the amount of money that they made is one thing. I don't think it would have taken a genius to draw the NFL into the black profit-wise. I don't think that was anything that wasn't inevitable with how popular the product was. The way they went about many of the issues that they've had, I have been highly critical of him, of the leadership, and of the direction of the league. At the same time, he's been there long enough, and they've faced enough challenges that he's been able to overcome and continue moving in very difficult territory. When we put him up against his contemporaries, other North American sports commissioners, he's head and shoulders above everybody else. It's not even close, in my opinion, for what they've had to do, how they have handled it, what they've done to kind of continue to move forward. You've got to give him a pretty high grade, and I think history will bear that out. That's a book somebody will read someday, or somebody will write someday. Hopefully people would read it. An interesting lesson in history. But that said, a chapter in that book would be the complete and total public relations and regulatory failure within the NFL of the Ray Rice situation. Everybody handled that as poorly as possible, and that has reverberated through. And I think that's a large part of what we see today. Maybe there's a quicker trigger on the NFL. Maybe they are quicker to make a strong determination on something the other way. Because with Ray Rice, it was really like, oh boy, I hope this goes away sometime soon. You give out, I wouldn't necessarily say an overcomplicated penalty, but a one-game suspension, then you're not going to get paid for a game, even though you can play, which just screams compromise with the Ravens, without having seen anything and thinking the door then is just shut. The video gets out, as you recall, which, gosh, that was right around 10 years ago now, wasn't it? I think it was right around the 4th of July. But the video gets out, and it's horrible. And this is not something we've seen really in the, kind of the launch of the high-level video era of society. We didn't see the crimes that athletes were accused of very often. When we see this, it's like, oh, boy, that's bad. And at this point now, it's like there is absolutely no way the NFL saw this and came down with the ruling that they did. If they did and they tried to bury the tape, that's almost an even bigger problem. But how poorly they handled that, how poorly the Ravens handled that from a PR perspective, and then to see them kind of flip-flop on it, and then all of a sudden he's just gone. Now he's suspended for an indefinite period of time. The same thing would end up happening in Cleveland with Kareem Hunt. Video proved to be the ultimate, checks and balances for the NFL. And the NFL now operates as if there will be video of things that happen. And that, in a way, is almost smarter. I understand that there are problems with it, but they can walk back something that's too extreme. They can cut something down. They learned that, I think, from the Ray Rice incident. When they go too light, too quickly into something, and really, try to kind of, in a way, cover up what happened, you face much bigger problems. And Ray Rice, to this day, is still brought up as an incident that the NFL probably wishes it could have back and rule differently than it did.
I don't think there's any question about that, because the late Paul Tagliabue had a quiet internal policy, which he would articulate to certain key members in his organization. I need to have whatever problem it is, I need us to get rid of it in 48 hours. That was always his deal. And it seems like the NFL has gone back to, especially in the world of video, that rather informal, quiet policy of there's a problem, get rid of it.
You can totally understand why any large corporation would want that policy. I mean, that makes sense. And I'm sure Paul Tagliabue was smart enough to never put that in writing.
Right.
I do think, though, there's an understandable implication of the urgency behind a situation. That's why you want it fixed. But in my opinion, and the NFL is guilty of this, I think, more than the other sports. In a way, this kind of protects them, but they're really, really old school, and they are very traditional. They weather the storm together. It's 32 owners, and that's it. They really kind of lock into each other. Not nearly as much stuff goes out from the ownership group in the NFL as it does to compared, let's say, the NBA or MLB, which, by the way, is about to be a Hindenburg of a situation that they can't control or handle. That's decades now of problems that they weren't able to solve. Yeah. The NFL doesn't have labor issues. Nothing even close compared to the other sports. Part of that is the solidarity of the owners, for better or worse. Now I'm not necessarily saying that's a good thing, but they don't allow these things to come up. And their silence oftentimes becomes the real problem with it.